Good afternoon, Aisha.
I know it's afternoon already. Usually
Mhm.
we kind of have a little bit of a morning thing
I
going
know
on,
that.
don't we?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Great to see you.
Yeah. And how's the smoke over there?
It's right now, it's great. Um, but it was really, really bad this morning, last
Mm.
night and this morning. Yeah, it's amazing because the fire is, the perimeter of the fire is so close. It's right there.
I know,
But
isn't
it's
that?
not coming this way anymore because there's a canyon and
Yeah.
river and
Right.
then freeway. So it's going that way. It's spreading that way. And so we're
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. One man's luck is another man's,
I know. Well,
you know.
luckily that way is like much, much less populated. It's just, we're like
Yeah.
at the foothill of the
Yeah.
Sierras. So
Yeah.
um yeah.
Yeah.
But all the animals and that's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This world. Um, Anyway, that's another whole topic, and maybe one day we'll talk about that. It's just sort of the soup we're all swimming in these days, right? The question about our um, natural world and environment and
Mhm.
Earth. But just to kind of move into our topic for today, usually we talk a little bit about what we might talk about and kind of let the conversation go.
Mhm.
Today we were thinking about talking about, let's say, self-censorship. We've had a
Our
few,
favorite topic.
yeah, we've had a few conversations about this. I don't know if we've spoken about it on the podcast, but this idea that, a lot of us on different sides of the aisle, or so to speak, have been talking about free speech and censorship. But there's this whole thing about self-censorship. And
Mhm.
frankly, in my life, I see that as a bigger issue. Like, yes, you could get hurt, you could get humiliated for speaking your truth, you could get maybe even killed, especially in the past, maybe, but more than not, we censor ourselves out of our own fear and desire for consensus, maybe desire not to avoid conflict,
Mhm.
desire to um, just out of fear.
Mhm.
And I know that this has really hit home for me over the years, but especially in the last few years around COVID, and kind of seeing things differently than the mainstream narrative about um, COVID and vaccines, and not particularly thinking it's controversial or anything, but just feeling uh, uh, my own values and worldview kind of come into question with
Mhm.
how it was handled and everything like that. And so, and then, I've had conversations, and I've had even more recent conversations with other groups that I'm part of about, mm, you know, when do you speak? When do you listen? When do you
Mhm.
say silent? When is it good to do that, and when is it not?
Mhm.
And I know you have had experiences too about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that we don't consciously think about it or talk about it. And it's kind of good to get into this because, well, next time when I have conversation with other people, it will be helpful for me,
Yeah,
because I sort of think about these things in a very nebulous way. Like,
yeah,
oh, like almost like a regret, right? When I had a conversation later, it's like, oh, why did I, you know, not say what I wanted to say? Or
mm, mm,
well,
mm.
why did I say that? I should have just listened, or it's always afterwards that
Mhm,
I just regret. But I mean, regretting. is great if then I can think about, okay, why I didn't do it or I did do it and all that. But it's like I feel like I always stop at that regret point and then I won't go further into it. So I'm kind of looking forward to, you know, talking about or discussing
Yeah, kind of
and
continuing the discussion because we've
yeah,
heard
yeah.
many. Yeah, and looking at, well, I will say for you, from what you told me, it's not, let's put it in the past that we're learning already and we've integrated things already and we are moving
Mm,
already and being less censored, less self-censoring, less silent. I
mm,
feel that even in this last few years, I've built up some courage, for lack
mhm,
of a better word. I built up some understanding of this position that I find myself in, of hiding, not speaking my truth. Uh,
mhm.
there's times to speak. You don't want to get into a discussion, an argument, or state your difference in every situation. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't think you want to. What's the point? But where is it important? How do you make those choices? That's a tricky one.
Yeah, I like the fact that you're asking those questions like when do we speak, when do we listen, when do we stay silent? What were those three things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. When to speak, when to
Because
listen, when to say
yeah,
something. Yeah,
because I think self-censorship is not all bad,
yeah,
like you're
exactly.
saying
Yeah,
that there are times that we just want to listen and then we don't have to argue, certain thing about certain things. And so I like those distinctions, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. I like that you like those distinctions. As you say that, I like those distinctions too, because it is not black and white. It's
Mhm.
not you're either courageous or not courageous. You're either silent or you speak. You don't have to be a bulldozer. And yet, when are you have to check in with yourself. Is there fear there?
Mhm.
Is this fear, what is this fear about? And that's a learning process, right? But
Mhm.
sometimes you get there and like, oh, I did say in this group that I was talking about that I have that we meet monthly, and it's five of us, all women. And I had said that there's four women who I would just say are white women older than me. And I said to them today, I feel like part of my role is to point out some differences,
Mhm.
not because my skin color is different, but because that's just how I see it. Like I feel a little different and I don't want to, what's the word? Find myself like almost like somebody's decided who I am, and then I'm just agreeing with them instead of,
Mm.
no, I'm not like that. And
Right.
to be honest, that could have started for me when I was a young person, because I came to this country when I was 7 from Pakistan, a warm climate country where I spoke Urdu and had extended family around me. And then I moved to Maine, one of the whitest states in the nation, and I am in a nuclear family setting, and English is not my first language. And like there's a setup there, for the mind,
Right.
let alone for the social interactions. And
Mhm.
so I know that, people can look at you a certain way and then you feel different. And
Mhm.
I would say that's true for every human being.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
there's some life experiences that just starkly make that apparent,
Yeah.
right? So, so yeah. So like this self-censorship thing is it's so interesting because the part that I think why this topic is so important, I go for me, is because I think it's more dangerous than other people censoring you. Because when we all stay silent, right? There's that classic quote about the Holocaust. They came for this person, they came for that person, but there was no one to speak for you. There was no one to
Right.
speak for you. There was no one to, and then there was no one left, right? So
Mhm.
I don't, I I think there is that, what when is like your danger signals go off or something like that. Some
Mhm.
it has implications.
Definitely. Yeah.
And that's us staying silent. It's not somebody else making us. I mean, of course, the outer world is saying that and it's scary for us, but then a lot of these things are just like consensus staying silent, right? Not
Mhm.
speaking. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people might not agree or have a little bit of question, but they won't say it because they want to. I mean, let's speak for ourselves, right?
Right.
We do that, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
about to when to speak, when to listen, and when to stay silent.
Right. Well, I guess, when to stay silent is pretty clear
Is it?
for me. I think that, well, there are different scenarios, but one of them would be, let's say I'm talking with, somebody else's parents, let's say, like, well, Mark's parents, my husband's parents passed away, but when I had conversations with them, I just, they were in totally different generation, right? And they would have been Mark's mom would have been like close to 90, I guess. And the
Mhm,
dad would have been a little younger. So, upper 80s. And so when I have a conversation with people like that, well, people like that meaning, they have a lot of different beliefs,
mhm, mhm, mhm.
right? So I feel pretty comfortable just listening or stay silent. Um, but even within that circumstance, maybe there are times that I want to say something. So it's not like person dependent. I guess it's a topic dependent, and also who they are, the people you're talking to. Yeah, there are too many different scenarios, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, maybe there's not an easy answer, right? But I mean, we're trying to explore that, you know?
Yeah.
What do we recognize about ourselves, you know?
Hmm. Like, for example, if somebody's talking about their emotions, how angry they feel, how sad they feel, those moments are the moments that I feel like it's good to be just listening and only like, let's say I have thoughts going, in my head going, well, this person is really angry, but I I know, he shouldn't be angry or something like that. In my head, that's what I'm thinking.
Mhm,
I probably would choose not to stay silent, right?
mhm.
Um, I mean, I don't know. It's like you kind of have to come up with a very specific situation,
Right.
but we don't want to negate the other person's feelings, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you want to first acknowledge, it's like, all right, I
yeah.
hear you, your anger, your sadness, your fear. So, in that sense, we tend to be the listener and then we
Right,
listen.
right,
When they start to say, what do you think? Do you have any suggestions? We
right.
might speak, but
Yeah, I mean, I think this is interesting to try to start this conversation, but there's so many contexts for conversation, right?
yeah.
And you know, for example, if we talk about groups we're part of, and you named a scenario in the past, you know, where you've censored yourself, and I just speaks where I censored myself, and
Mhm.
then where I chose to speak because I cared about that group of women, and I cared about the relationships that we had. So I
Mhm.
said something.
Mhm.
There's a level of caring for others and for myself that comes up, and I feel somewhat safe enough to take that risk, you know?
Mhm.
Um, so, yeah, my mind is going in a lot of different directions, you know,
Yeah.
how to kind of take this conversation.
Right.
Um,
One thing you just said, like where my mind went was, I mean, all these like self-censoring come from the fact that we have our history, right? Growing up, if we spoke, our parents might have said, don't say such a thing,
yeah, yeah,
or they might have punished us.
right,
And then as we got older, friends, like if we said something, friends might not like it and
right,
get angry. So
right.
all these little different things. So like, when you and I were having conversation before, and I was telling you how um this one situation where I was talking with, a couple people, and then they said something, and then I was like, "Ooh, I don't really agree with that." But I couldn't say it because for one, I was afraid that I just didn't want to sound critical for one thing. I didn't want to go I didn't want to go against what they were saying, me against them and all that. But what I want to say here is my point is that it's interesting how maybe these friends were representing of certain people in the past,
Mhm.
right? So that also comes into a play there because, well, maybe I still care about my relationship with these people, friends or whoever. So it's not so much that I don't care. It's just that maybe these people represent um like they're like my parents, or they're certain friends I used to have, and then there's like this weird feeling like, oh, I shouldn't say anything because my subconscious remembers um the past
Yeah,
experience,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, no doubt, all of the things that we do that we don't wanna do, or that we see that are fear-based or, are triggers from the past
Mm,
or some learning. But that said, yes, we should process that and look at that on an emotional level, and, uh and if we have an understanding, we can also choose to do
right.
something that's past our comfort zone and
Hmm.
because it seems like if we don't speak, the consequences for not speaking are greater than the consequences for speaking.
Right, because you're kind of perpetuating the same
Yeah,
thing over and over
yeah,
and over.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and, this was especially true in the last years, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot of implications of what was happening with the mandates and things like that, and that is, um, like, very disturbing, right? I mean, I was watching, Kim Iverson
Oh
and
yeah.
Jedediah Lou, it just came up on my feed, and Kim represents the more progressive side in this case, and Jedediah, I think her name was, she is a journalist and more on the conservative side, and
Oh wow, I want to watch that.
they were seemed very amicable kind of a conversation. They were
Mm.
talking about the mandates and COVID, and she was talking about how she was initially bought into it the very early stages. She was scared and
This was Kim Iverson or the
no,
other?
the other
Oh,
person.
the other. Uh-huh.
and how she bought into it the very
Mm,
first few months because she was a new mom and she was scared for her baby
mm,
and just everything. And so I didn't watch the whole podcast, but I just listened to parts of it. And I
mhm,
felt this was something to come back to. I was kind of curious about where they would go, and they didn't spend the whole time on that topic. But I think I just brought it up right now was just thinking about like there's fear there, you go along with it, and then you start seeing something that doesn't make sense. So then we
mhm.
start speaking up about it. And those two women are examples of people who take a vocal stance against it, right?
Right, because
In
like
a
Kim
very
Iverson,
yeah,
she's progressive, yet
yeah,
she's
yeah.
anti-mandate
And
and
she said she was one of the only ones talking about that in the
right.
very beginning. So yeah. So how does that so you and I, we're not of that, we don't have that forum, right? We're not podcasters with a whatever
Mhm.
100,000 views or whatever, you know. But we're human beings and we encounter people, and then what, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so like what you said about right, like we all have this fear about speaking out or speaking our minds and all that. And we've been talking about this, you and I,
yeah,
not
yeah,
not necessarily on the podcast, but one thing that you mentioned that really hit me hard was, well, when you choose not to say that goes against what the other people are saying, we're sacrificing, our relationship to deepen. It's
right,
only when we can
right,
say, hey, this is uncomfortable, but I have a different opinion. So you're choosing to say what you need to say, but it's because we trust them,
yeah,
that they could listen to me, and then therefore we can deepen our relationship,
right,
right?
right,
And that was really impactful, for me when you said that. And so the other day I was talking with somebody else, and then, he said something which kind of um I didn't, I wasn't going along with what he was saying, even though I totally understood where he was coming from.
right, right,
And interestingly, I think with the conversation I had with you, and then other things like, I have a mom friend who always reminds me to speak my truth,
mhm,
And so here and there, just a little bit, I practice these things, and I was able to. Well, for a second, I'm like, yeah, right. Wow, you're right. But I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm lying. I'm lying to myself. You
mhm,
know, there are things that I don't agree with them, and I just, felt like I could take my chance to practice
right, right,
saying like, well, I totally understand where you're coming from, but I also understand, what these people are feeling that you're talking about. Um, because I'm able to put myself in these other
right,
people's,
right,
shoes. And I guess there's a way to bring up what you feel, so that you don't have to self-censor, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
remember that
yeah, yeah,
podcast that we had about the parable.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know, number 2 or number 3, or I forget which one, but there are ways, instead of saying, "Oh, that's, BS, I don't really believe what you're saying." Instead, we can just go, "Well, I hear you, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but here's my
Well,
take."
well, I liked what you just said earlier because it resonated with me. Is like you said, um, I hear you, and I don't. actually share the same opinion or
Yeah,
something.
or I have different
I have a different opinion.
ideas or
So it's
opinions.
almost like a formula. Like, I always,
Yeah.
when you're scared, you don't have the words to bridge between what you want to honor that person and
Hmm.
you want to bring in your truth. So you could almost have that kind of like flavor. I hear you, but I actually have a different opinion. Would you like
Yeah.
to hear it? And then you
Right.
created an invitation for yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That they want you, so I hear you. You could even say more about what you hear. I hear your fear and or your disgust or your disappointment
Hmm.
in this situation, and I have additional thoughts on that, or I have some additional thoughts that are maybe a different opinion.
Hmm.
I'd like to hear it,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, would you like to hear it?
Because then
Right.
it creates that receptivity. It gives you
Yeah.
a chance to say, I'm going to bring up something, get prepared.
Yeah.
And then do you want to hear it?
Right.
They can say no, or they can say yes. They'll usually say yes, right?
Yeah.
And then you have this sort of bridging of this dialogue thing.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah, like little things like
right,
that really
right, right.
helps. Yeah.
So, I hear you and I have a different opinion. Would you like to hear it? Doesn't that seem like it's so feel like it's like learning your ABCs,
Right.
Like your limbic system can't really think of those things, but you just
Mhm.
internalize that
Yeah.
that phrasing. I think I could do that more often now, even just that little bit. I mean, I've done a lot of work to try to get to
Yeah.
a place where I'm not censoring myself and terrified of certain things, but and I have a different opinion. And you can choose what your level of trust is. That how much do you want to take this relationship deeper, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's part of the thing. There's a question of each relationship and how much you want to take it deeper. And then there's the bigger question about if this is a situation where it's just this difference in opinions about politics, or is this a situation that has broader implications for everybody's safety and well-being,
Mhm. Mhm. Mm.
like the mandates,
Yeah.
like medical health, medicalization of societies and
Mhm.
pharmacology, and like the pharmaceutical industry. Those are two places I have very strong feelings about, because they sort of imply that the whole world, like the medicalization and the chemicalization of the world. I have strong
Mhm.
feelings about that,
Mhm.
and I have
Mhm.
strong feelings about um, making everybody go along with things. I mean, this whole thing with COVID is for me about like having some choice.
Mhm.
And actually, frankly, I would love to, if I had censorship, I would censor in the other direction. You know what I mean? Like, let's not advertise pharmaceuticals, right? Let's
Right.
let's ever if we're going to advertise anything, let's advertise regenerative agriculture, nutrition and nutraceuticals, if you
In Japan, this is just the side note, but in Japan, I think they're allowed to do TV advertisement for over-the-counter drugs,
Mhm.
but not what do you call the other one? The ones that you have to be,
Prescription.
yeah, prescription drugs you're not supposed to.
Okay, that's an interesting distinction. I wonder why they have that. You probably heard the statistics that most media, the pharmaceutical industry, they were the biggest advertisers on
Yeah. Oh,
mainstream.
I mean, it's amazing because I don't watch TV. We don't have like cable, so all we watch would be like movies and things like that on Netflix and YouTube
Right.
and um but I think was that Prime Video or something? They have um you can like choose to watch some of the videos that movies that have advertisement in it.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And I was like the other day I was so shocked. All these prescription drugs, advertisement. Like,
Yeah,
whoa.
yeah, yeah. It's actually a
Mhm.
whole different worldview, I feel like,
Mm.
Uh, um, yeah, it's almost like the I think that's part of this whole censorship thing for me too. I
Mhm.
have such a um deep respect for the human body on some level and its
Mhm.
ability to heal itself,
Mhm.
and just the feeling of the human body in the natural order of things. It's almost like a
Yeah.
spiritual view, right? And of a
Mhm.
certain kind. And it just seems to, all of this seems to go against my beliefs about, well, yeah, I mean, I'm not against anything in its pure form. Like, I'm not, I would never begrudge anybody anything on well, I shouldn't say that. Like, I there's some things I wish that just didn't exist in the world, and I'm not going to say them here just because I don't want to
Mhm.
be so controversial. But I but like, I'm censoring on this podcast. Um but I just feel like, geez, like, even the whole medicalization of birth, like, how many
Yeah.
layers of it are there? How many layers of obsession with the value of technology are there, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And, yeah, yeah, I mean, and I think we're in this conversation, we're moving from, like, there's the overarching question about, self-censorship, and
Mhm.
moving from when do you speak, when do you listen, when do you, stay silent? But
Mhm.
there's something also about content, right,
Mhm.
of what we're talking about. So there's a broader kind of shaping of this conversations when you, but then there's like, conversations do you and I want to have that we might feel like we have to censor ourselves? I mean, I
Mhm.
think you and I are aware that we're both Asian, can I just say? And we're both women, and we kind of have that, some of that training to
Mhm.
stay in our lanes, right? And it's not a comfortable zone for us to get out there and be visible, about some opinions. But I will say that that is an area that's very, hard for me to, that I have a lot of strong opinion. I don't have really strong opinions about a lot of things, but in that area I do, about
Yeah.
the
Y
radicalization of the world.
that the thing that you said about, like, okay, I have, I hear you.
Yeah,
So you acknowledge and then say, but I have different view on this.
yeah.
Would you like to hear it? That would you like to hear it is great in so many different ways because you're inviting the other person. Um, Also, by saying that, I feel like the other person not has to, but other person will go, okay, yeah, would I be willing to listen to the other side,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
So there's this sort of a preparation.
yeah,
Um, that person might feel like, oop, what is she gonna say now? What's
yeah.
her opinion? But it other things I was thinking was like, what if just like be really honest and say, okay, I hear you. I but I, have other views on this.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear it? And it kind of makes me uncomfortable. I'm almost ready to self-censor this because in the past,
Right.
I was judged,
Yeah,
for expressing my
yeah,
views.
right, right, right,
And I'm not even asking you to agree with me. It's
right.
just that if you want to hear, my side, and
Yeah,
these kind of
yeah,
preparation kind of, it helps for the other person to go, well, okay, she seems reasonable. Maybe I'll just sit and listen to where she's
right,
coming
right,
from,
right,
right?
right,
Because if if we just if somebody says, okay, of course mandate was a good thing or
yeah,
something, right? And then I'm like, oh, I don't think so. That was a horrible thing.
yeah,
Then
yeah,
that person is just not gonna want to
right,
hear.
right, right,
So it does need some tactic.
right. Yeah, no, I think this is brilliant. I mean, because I think it's helpful to me just to think about it. I mean, obviously, it's one level, it feels like a no-brainer, right? We could have done this a
Mhm.
long time ago. It's not so complicated. But I think we've grown, and we can just say that, you have, I hear you, and you acknowledge what you hear, right? I hear,
Mhm.
and maybe on the emotional level or the content level, I
Mhm.
hear you. I hear that it's scary, or that upsets you, and that there's um, that you think that mandates are worth it to
Mhm.
keep everybody safe.
Mhm.
And I have a different opinion. And in the past, I've been really shy and scared to share that opinion, because I felt like no one would listen, and I didn't want to stick out. But
Mhm.
would you be willing to hear it? But here's another one. Would you be willing? Would you like to hear it? But would you be willing to hear it, as you said? And then
Mhm.
would you be willing to listen to me, you
Mhm.
know, on it? Uh,
Yeah.
I would really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that there is a willingness, that it's an invitation. It's going to be hard for people to say no,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
most people, and like you said, you didn't go right into that. It's sort of like the sun and the wind parable,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, that this the wind is like, you said something, I'm gonna say something.
Mhm.
I'm gonna contradict you.
Yeah.
And now, instead of like saying that, oh, okay, and I'm gonna, just kind of come in, and would you, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Aikido, but I always think of that
Right.
like, move with the person's,
Mhm.
like that energy of the person.
Use that energy,
Yeah,
the other
yeah,
opponent's energy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. I sent an email message to this doctor's office asking something. And I knew that, well, I suspected that they might misunderstand me
yeah,
of what I was asking. So I made it really clear. This is about regarding this. And then, blah, blah, blah. Sure enough, the office person emailed me back and said, oh, for something like that, you need to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, she totally misunderstood me. So I said, well, thank you for the email, the reply. But as I mentioned in the first email, this is about this particular thing and not something else. If you can just reread the email and get back to me, how I can go from here. And of course, like in my head, I'm like, God, I just made it so clear. She still didn't get it, but I made it a little polite. But my kind of nudge was like, can you please reread my
right.
email, And then she emailed me back and said, I read your email and um, just follow my instruction and, blah, blah, blah. And then she quoted me. She put the quote underneath, highlighted. And then that's exactly what I said. But somehow she like put that there and she didn't even notice that she didn't read it right.
Uh,
Right. And then I got next reply right after that. I didn't reply to that, but she sent me two messages and said, oh, let me ask our doctor about it. I think she kind of answered, she got um I guess she reread it and
yeah,
then
yeah,
realized that,
yeah.
right? And what I was gonna say about that, we were talking about
Just
tactic. Oh yeah, yeah. So it's like it's interesting. I felt like we're going, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
but
yeah. So when you think of that, how could it have gone differently, if you, because
I
you know,
yeah, I was kind of I reread my reply
hmm,
and I was sort of impressed that I wasn't just going boom,
yeah, yeah,
it's like you totally misunderstood me.
Yeah.
Read the message again, please. That would have been the wind going boom,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
But I just gave a little bit of,
yeah,
please reread my message. And she's like, then she came back with the same kind of
yeah.
twist going,
So
you
so
know,
so I wonder, this is just a thought, tell me if you think this is relevant to what you were saying. What if it wasn't, it was, you used polite words, but there was still a little bit of that energy of like,
yeah.
you bitch. So if you go like to go back and say, um, I just read my email and it's maybe I didn't make myself really clear enough, and I just going to rephrase what I said, um, and just kind of took it back on yourself and then put it out. Maybe that wouldn't have been the
Exactly.
right, like that would have been
Yeah.
a different attack.
Yeah. But I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, it's
I just
because you were
because
pissed
I'm
off, right? Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is interesting, right?
passive
So,
aggressive.
yeah. Well, on that note, do you want to do it's about our usual time that we said we could go on. I mean, this is an interesting topic, but
Yeah.
um maybe we find a little closure here and
Yeah. I think it's
final sum
something
up
that
anything?
maybe, I
Yeah,
mean, if anybody, had a chance to listen to this, maybe this will be the springboard, right? Like kind of to think about these kind of things, how we can go about saying what we need to say, or how we can come back and, okay, is this a moment to say something, or maybe just listening, is enough,
yeah,
or maybe we do have things to say, but maybe this is a moment, this is a circumstance where we maybe shouldn't say anything, right? So just kind of bring those things into our awareness, so that we can kind of think about it next
right,
time when we talk to
right,
somebody. And
right. Not always, that we don't always self-censor ourselves. We just look at what we when we speak, when
mhm,
we stay silent,
yeah,
when we listen, we just become aware of those pieces and then make our best choices.
yeah.
And
And when you want to be bitch, you can, but do it consciously, right? It's like, oh, I knew what I was doing.
all right, see, that's beautiful. I love it. Thank you for listening, everybody,
Yeah, thank
and
you.
I hope you know, we are doing this for our own deep pleasure and friendship, and we do hope that people will listen. And if you do listen, we'd love your feedback and for you to subscribe. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. All
Well,
right.
thanks, Aisha.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye,
Till next
everyone.
time.
Bye-bye.